Hang on a second, I've just been tagged. At Sear Pete, rested his steak for ages. Do you like eating cold steak, Richo? Ah, Pete, let me let you in on a little secret. I know that the inside of the steak is still at the right temperature. It takes a long time for that temperature to go down. But if you're worried about the outside of the steak being cold, all you need to do is what we call in the business, flashing your steak. See that? You just turn it around a couple of times in the pan and it gets that heat back into the outside. And then you've got a perfectly rested steak and you've got the heat on the outside. There you go, Pete. I've solved your problem for you, or one of them anyway. This is for all the one-hit wonders, the people who like their steak well done. This is one of my greatest hits, Richo's Steak 101. This is all about choosing and cooking the perfect steak. But before we get to cooking the steak, I want to run you through two of my favorite steaks. They're both porterhouse steak, but they're very, very different. On my left-hand side here, I've got some grass-fed Angus beef. It's got some lovely marbling through the middle there, and that is some beautiful fat. I can tell by the fat on the outside, there's a little yellow tinge to it, and that tells me it's eaten a lot of grass. It's had a little bit of grain as well, but it's lived most of its wonderful life eating grass, and that gives it a real earthy kind of flavour. I love grass-fed porterhouse. It's one of my favourite steaks. It gives you a lovely mouthfeel and a lovely taste of what beef should taste like. And with a little bit of marbling in there as well, it helps to give you moisture and lubrication and helps to make that steak feel a little bit more tender. So when you're looking for a great grass-fed steak, have a look for something like this. A little bit of marbling in there, a little yellow tinge to the outside fat, and good colour in your meat. That is an outstanding steak, and I would eat this every single day. But today it's all about the greatest hits. So we're going to take it up a couple of notches. On this side here, my right side, I have a piece of Australian Wagyu beef. The breed comes from Japan, and that breed has a tendency to put a lot of marbling. That's the intramuscle fat in there. That fat helps to give you a great mouth feel, just like this other steak. But as you can see from this steak here, it has a marble score of 8 to 9. It even has a little tag here to tell you that marble score, and that tells me that there's a lot of fat in it. You can see that fat, and I know it's going to be an extremely rich, flavoursome steak. Normally a piece of steak like this, you would only have a small piece. With a grass-fed steak, you can have a much larger steak. But me, I always love a big steak. So if you're going to go down big, if you're going to have a greatest hit, you might as well have a big, beautiful piece of meat. You can choose whatever steak you like, but let me tell you another thing. This Wagyu beef is going to be 3 to 4 times the price of this steak. So if you are going to have a steak like this, make it a celebration and make it proud. And if you are going to have a delicious piece of Wagyu steak, in fact, if you're going to have any kind of steak, make sure you cook it properly. Now, of course, I've chosen the Wagyu beef for my greatest hit, and that's what I'm going to show you how to cook. But of course, I have to cut a steak. So I'm going to cut a nice big piece of Wagyu. And I always say that if you're going to have a steak, always go for a thick steak. One thick steak shared between 2 people is going to be a hell of a lot juicier and flavoursome than a very thin steak. So through the middle I go of this lovely steak, and you can see with a good sharp knife, it goes through like butter. You can see the spine sits here, and next to the spine, that's where the tough sinew is. I like to take that off so it doesn't twist the steak when you cook it. So I just put it upside down like this, and with a good sharp knife, I run the knife between the sinew and the meat, just around the outside there to remove that tough sinew, and then straight down like that. There we have it, a beautiful piece of meat with no sinew on it. You can trim it any way you want, or you can let your butcher do it, but I prefer to do it myself. The other thing I've done is I've left this little eye muscle here. This is what we call the chain muscle, and this is what holds this whole muscle here onto the spine. I'm gonna leave it on there because it is delicious and flavoursome, and as we say, the meat closest to the bone is always the sweetest. Now I've got my steak cut. I'm gonna let it come up to room temperature, season it up, and I'll show you how to cook this perfect steak. What a beautiful piece of steak that is. And this might be the only piece of Wagyu steak that I have all year, but believe me, if you're gonna have a great piece of steak, you might as well have a big, thick, juicy one like this. Now, if I asked my doctor, he would say you can only have one of these a year, but I think I'll have to get a second opinion. In fact, I might call myself the doctor. You can have a steak like this every week. And this is how you get a steak ready before you cook it. One of the most important things is that you bring it up to room temperature as much as you can. That helps to cook the steak nice and evenly, and it will mean that it's going to be moist and juicy and succulent and cooked to the exact way that you like it. Now it's time to season the steak. And you see, I've gone for the a flossy salt, I call it. And this is what's gonna make this steak taste really, really good. Salt loves meat and meat loves salt. It's the salt that brings out the flavor of the delicious meat that you're gonna cook. If you're worried about having too much salt in your diet, don't put any on your vegetables. I say it all the time because no one wants the vegetables anyway. How can you eat a vegetable when you've got a beautiful steak like this? And make sure you season every single side of that steak, because the salt's on the outside of it and a lot of it will fall away, but there'll be just enough salt on there to season it up and make it delicious. I like to season it up just before I cook it. And then I take some time with a pepper mill and I turn my steak over again. Make sure there's plenty of pepper on the outside. Now just a little bit of olive oil. Now, just a couple of drops, because that olive oil will help transfer the heat from the pan into the steak. Just a little massage of that around there like that. And with the steak, I mop up all of that salt and pepper. Now you can see I've got a heavy base cast iron skillet here. Great for cooking steaks. Because of that heavy cast iron, it holds the heat. So when I put the steak in there, it'll sear it. You can see some smoke coming off that. That's because it's hot. That's what I want. I want to sear it at the start. Now my tip is to cook your steak at a medium to high temperature. Some people put their steak in a really hot pan and I find it cooks the outside way too quickly. Even cooking is what you're looking for. In it goes, and fat side down. We'll render some of this Wagyu fat into the pan here and it'll give it some flavor. Listen to that. The sound of angels singing, the fry pan searing, that beautiful Wagyu steak cooking the way it should be. Now what I like to do is sear one side and turn it over, sear another side and turn it over. I want you to think of this steak like a chicken on a rotisserie, going around and around and around. We try and cook the steak nice and evenly, and by turning it around and around, it cooks it evenly throughout. If you leave the steak on one side, all of the juices will escape from the top, and you don't want to do that. Those juices remain in the steak, and that's why it's so juicy and tender. So I'm just going to stand here, turn this around a couple of times, and cook it to perfection for about 10 to 15 minutes until it's at the right temperature on the inside. Have a listen to that sizzle. That's the music that I like to listen to. That's why this recipe is one of my greatest hits. Perfectly cooked. I've been doing this for a long time, so I can tell with my finger. That tastes good. But if you're not sure about how to get your steak to the perfect temperature, a digital thermometer is your friend. It gives you X-ray vision, and a digital probe in the middle of that steak will tell you exactly how it's cooked. When it gets to about 45 degrees Celsius, I know it's on the rare side of medium, and that's exactly how I like it. Now I'm going to take the steak out and rest it. The reason I like to rest my steak is because there's a lot of action being going on in the pan and a lot of heat. It contracts the muscle fibers. So if I cut into it straight away, it'll squeeze out all the juices. And that's what I do not want. I want the juices to stay in the steak where they belong. So I always rest my meat for half the cooking time. And that gives me time to get everything else ready. And I was looking at the fry pan here and I was thinking, Richo, why not use up all of those lovely juices and get the flavor out of the pan? So I came across this little pizza dough that was just hiding away in my fridge. I'll just give it a bit of a tap like that and peel it straight off the plate. What I'm going to do is pop this dough into the pan and let it sizzle and sear nice and gently and pick up all of the flavors and the juices in that pan. I might add a little bit of olive oil or a little bit of butter to get it nice and crispy, but it's just a matter of laying it out into the pan here and cooking it nice and slowly. It'll get nice and dark in color and it'll pick up all the juices and all the flavor from that pan. And this is why chefs eat better than anyone else in the world. We know how to extract every single bit of flavor. Some cucumber, some tomato, and some yellow tomato, some capsicum, parsley, onion, and chili. And to that, I'm gonna add some lime. I love fresh lime, and this lime will help to cut through all of that lovely Wagyu fat. Just what I like. A little bit of salt on there and some pepper. And all you need to do is mix this together. When I make a salsa like this, I like to mix it together just at the last minute. And that way I know that it's gonna taste nice and beautiful and fresh. Often if you mix it too early, it starts to get bruised and soggy. And then an extra virgin olive oil drizzle over the top like that. And I reckon my salsa is ready to go. This is gonna be a huge hit. Wait till you get to try that. Now I've got the bread there like that, and I'll just smear a little bit of labna, which is yogurt that's been hung, and that's gonna be like the butter. Now I'm ready to carve the steak, and this is where I get really, really excited. So I'll grab my beautiful big knife here, grab the steak off the board here, and then a few nice big calves, straight through like that. Look at that beautiful meat. Look at that, perfectly cooked. Some nice big slices all the way across, and I'll save this little piece for later. A little bit of a tap and you can see the meat just falls apart. And onto the top it goes. A little bit of salsa on there to give it some color. A little bit on the outside there. Looks fantastic. And I've also got this beautiful flaky salt. This is the finishing salt. A little bit of this on top, and you can see the crystals. It helps to season the meat and also makes it look nice as well. Some sesame seeds on there to finish it off. The perfect steak, cooked to perfection. A nice bit of bread to soak up all of the juices, and a beautiful salsa just to bring the whole thing together and give it some color. That is the best piece of meat I have cooked in a long time, and I can't wait to tuck into that.